She had 3 seconds to decide. Let the Mafia boss marry the woman who planned to murder him or kiss him in front of 200 armed criminals and destroy everything. Her hand was already shaking when she stepped forward. Security reached for their guns. His fiancée's smile froze. And Naya did the one thing a waitress should never do. She put her lips on the most dangerous man in the city. Hey family, before the story begins, I want you to do something real quick. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your comments fuel these stories. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button because what happens next will leave you speechless. And Happy New Year to every single one of you. Let's start this year with a story that will keep you glued till the very end. The Grand Marquis Ballroom in downtown Chicago erupted in chaos. Crystal glasses slipped from manicured fingers and exploded against Italian marble. Conversations died mid-word as 200 pairs of eyes locked onto the center of the room. Men who'd ordered executions over breakfast instinctively shifted, hands drifting toward concealed weapons beneath tailored suits. Dominic Castellano didn't move. He stood perfectly still in his midnight black Armani, the most lethal man in Chicago's underground, suddenly and inexplicably the center of a scandal he hadn't orchestrated. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds, but in those seconds, Naya Martinez felt the full weight of her decision crash down on her chest like a physical blow. I'm going to die, she thought with crystalline clarity. They're going to kill me right here on this floor. As she pulled back, her lips barely leaving his, she pressed something warm into his palm. Her phone, screen still glowing with the recording app active. Her mouth brushed his ear, voice low and trembling despite every effort to stay steady. Watch it. Don't react. Just watch. Hands seized her immediately. Security yanked her backward so violently she stumbled in her worn server's shoes, nearly losing her balance. Someone shouted her name. Marcus, the head bartender who'd vouched for her. Someone else cursed in rapid Italian. Chairs scraped against marble as men rose, bodies coiled tight, ready for blood. What the hell is this? The voice cut through the chaos like a whip crack. Isabella Marchetti, the fiancée, stood frozen near the head table, her Valentino gown pristine, her face twisted with humiliation and rage. Get her away from him. Now. Naya didn't struggle. Her heart hammered so violently she could barely breathe, but her eyes stayed locked on Dominic's face. She needed to see something, anything, that told her she hadn't just sacrificed her life for nothing. For a heartbeat, his expression was unreadable, that famous Castellano mask firmly in place. Then his fingers closed around the phone. It was such a small movement, barely perceptible to anyone watching. But it changed everything. Enough. His voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely lethal. The room fell silent so fast it felt like the air had been sucked out. Let her go. The guards hesitated. Sir, she assaulted you. Dominic turned his head just slightly, and the look in his dark eyes could have drawn blood. I said, he repeated, each word deliberate, let her go. They released her immediately, stepping back like she'd become radioactive. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd like a physical wave. Isabella stared at him, disbelief and fury warring across her beautiful features. Dominic, are you serious right now? She just humiliated me, humiliated us, in front of everyone. He didn't look at her. His eyes never left Nia's face. "Everyone out," he said flatly. "The party's over." Murmurs erupted instantly. Protest, confusion, the low rumble of 200 dangerous people suddenly uncertain of the power dynamics in the room. But no one argued for long. When Dominic Castellano ended something, it ended.
No appeals. No negotiations.
Within 10 minutes, the ballroom began to empty. Nia stood frozen, legs trembling beneath her black server's uniform, her pulse roaring in her ears like a freight train. She'd done it. She'd warned him. Whether she survived, what came next was no longer in her control. They escorted her through a private corridor, the kind wealthy people use to avoid being seen, and into a small room with no windows. One table, 2 chairs, harsh fluorescent lighting that made everything feel clinical and cold. The door closed behind her with a heavy click, followed by the unmistakable sound of a lock engaging. Nia sat down slowly, pressing her palms flat against the cool metal table to keep them from shaking. Her mind kept replaying the same moment over and over. Isabella's voice, soft and casual as she'd laughed with someone in the service hallway. Asterisk after the wedding. It has to be after the wedding. Accidents happen all the time, and with everything in my name, asterisk. Nia swallowed hard against the rising nausea. She should have walked away. Should have pretended she'd heard nothing. Just another invisible server in a world that didn't see people like her as real. But then she remembered the way Dominic had smiled earlier that evening, unguarded for just a moment, accepting congratulations from people who would publicly mourn him while privately carving up his empire. Her chest tightened.
No.
She'd make the same choice again. The door opened. Dominic Castellano stepped inside alone. He closed the door behind him and locked it himself, the metallic click echoing in the small space. Nia shot to her feet. "I can explain."
Seat.
Something in his voice, not quite a command, not quite a request, made her obey without thinking. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he walked to the table with measured steps and placed her phone down carefully between them, like it was something fragile and dangerous all at once. "I watched it," he said simply. Her throat tightened. "All of it?" "Yes." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark, unable to see how far the drop was. "Then you know why I did it," she whispered. "I know what you heard," he corrected, his voice careful. "What I don't know is why a waitress would risk her life to warn me." "I wasn't doing it for you," she said before she could stop herself. One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. "Then for who?" "For me," she said quietly. "I couldn't live with knowing and doing nothing." He studied her then, not like a criminal sizing up prey, and not like the predator she knew he could be. Like a man trying to understand something unexpected that had just crashed into his carefully controlled world. "You planned this," he said. "No," she said quickly, meeting his eyes. "I swear I didn't plan the kiss. I panicked. There was no other way to get your attention without everyone else hearing. And the recording? That part one planned, because no one would believe me without proof." A ghost of a smile flickered across his face before vanishing. "You're either very brave," he said slowly, "or very foolish." She exhaled shakily. "I've been called worse." He leaned back slightly, arms crossing over his chest in a way that made him look both relaxed and utterly dangerous. Who are you running from? Her chest tightened painfully. I don't know what you mean. Your hands were shaking before you touched me, he said calmly, those dark eyes missing nothing. That wasn't fear of me. That's something you already live with. Mia looked down at the scarred metal table, at her own reflection distorted in its surface. His name is Devon, she said finally, the words tasting like ash. And he doesn't know how to let go. Dominic said nothing, but the quality of his silence changed, became heavier, more attentive, waiting. He used to say he loved me, she continued, her voice barely steady. Then he started controlling everything. What I wore, who I talked to, when I could leave the apartment. When I tried to end it, he followed me, threatened me, made it clear that leaving wasn't an option he'd accept. Police? Dominic asked. She laughed, bitter and hollow. They told me to change my number. Move. Get a restraining order. Like fear is something you can fold up and pack in a suitcase. That's why you took this job, he said. Not a question. Yes. To disappear. Yes. And after tonight, he asked. What was your plan after tonight? She met his eyes. I didn't think that far ahead. Dominic stood then, unfolding from his chair with the kind of controlled grace that reminded her exactly who and what he was. She braced herself for anger, for violence, for the consequences she'd known were coming. Instead, he said, You saved my life. The words landed between them with unexpected weight. Which means, he continued, his voice dropping lower, you are now under my protection. Her breath caught. I didn't ask. You didn't need to, he said, cutting her off gently but firmly. No one who saves me walks away unguarded. That's not how this works. She nodded slowly, exhaustion suddenly washing over her in waves. The adrenaline that had kept her moving was finally draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. What happens now? She asked. His gaze softened, just slightly, just enough. Now, he said, everything changes. Dominic didn't leave immediately. After saying those words, everything changes, he remained standing for a moment, studying Mia like he was committing her face to memory. Not the way men at the party had looked at her earlier, dismissive glances sliding past her like she was part of the furniture. This was different. Intent. Calculating. Curious. Mia shifted under the weight of his attention. You're staring. I'm deciding, he replied. Her throat tightened. Deciding what? Whether you're reckless, he said calmly, or extraordinary. She let out a shaky breath. I don't feel extraordinary. No one ever does. He turned then and unlocked the door, the sound seeming too loud in the small room. Come with me. Her pulse spiked. Where? Somewhere safer than this room. 2 guards appeared immediately in the hallway, straightening when Dominic stepped out. He didn't look at them as he gave the order. Escort her.
No restraints.
Mia blinked. That alone told her how drastically the night had shifted in ways she didn't fully understand yet. They led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, private elevators with biometric scanners, quiet halls lined with original artwork, away from the chaos of the ruined engagement party. She could still hear raised voices echoing faintly behind closed doors somewhere. Isabella's voice cut through once, sharp and hysterical, before being muffled. Mia flinched. She won't touch you, Dominic said without looking back. Not now. That should have comforted her. Instead, it raised a different question. What about later? She asked softly. He stopped walking and turned to face her. The guards halted at a respectful distance. Dominic's expression was unreadable, but his voice carried absolute certainty. There is no later where anyone harms you. The conviction in those words made her chest ache unexpectedly. They reached an underground parking garage where a black Mercedes S-Class waited, engine already running, windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. Dominic opened the back door himself and gestured for her to get in. Nia hesitated. I'm not under arrest? No, he said simply. She slid into the leather seat, and as soon as the door closed, the tension she'd been holding back finally cracked. Her hands started shaking violently. She clasped them together in her lap, trying to hide it, but it was useless. Dominic watched her from the opposite seat, his expression unreadable in the dim light. You're safe for now, he said. Breathe. She tried.
Failed.
Tried again. I didn't think I'd make it past tonight, she admitted, the words tumbling out. I really didn't. You did, he said, because you acted instead of freezing. That matters. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving the Grand Marquis and the wreckage of her old life behind. They rode in silence for several minutes, Chicago's lights blurring past the tinted windows like smeared paint. Nia's breathing eventually steadied, though her heart still thudded painfully against her ribs. Why didn't you ask more questions? She finally said. I already asked the important ones, Dominic replied. And you trust my answers? I trust the recording, he said. And I trust my instincts. She glanced at him. And what are they telling you now? That you didn't do this for money. She scoffed softly. If I wanted money, I wouldn't have kissed a crime lord in front of 200 armed men. A corner of his mouth lifted. Exactly. The car slowed, turning through a gated entrance she didn't recognize. High walls topped with cameras. Private security. The kind of place no one stumbled into by accident. This isn't a police station, she murmured. No, he said. It's one of my residences. Her nerves flared again. Why bring me here? Because if what you told me about Devon is true, he said evenly, then wherever you are staying is no longer safe. Her silence confirmed it. The house was in Lincoln Park, old money architecture updated with cutting-edge security. They were escorted inside by 2 guards who moved with military precision. The interior was minimalist and intimidating in its calm. High ceilings, clean lines, expensive art that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. Nia suddenly felt very small in her stained server's uniform, smelling like spilled wine and panic sweat. Dominic handed her a glass of water without asking. She drank it greedily, her throat raw. Sit, he said, motioning to a charcoal-gray couch. She sat. This time it felt different, not an interrogation across a table, but something closer to a conversation. He took the chair across from her, leaning forward slightly, with his elbows on his knees. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. She hesitated only for a second before the words started flowing. She told him about Devon, how charming he'd been at first when they'd met at Northwestern where she'd been taking night classes. How slowly, methodically, the charm had turned into control. Checking her phone, questioning her friends, monitoring her schedule. How the first time he hit her, he'd cried afterward and sworn on his mother's grave it would never happen again. How many times did it happen again? Dominic asked quietly. She looked down at her hands. Enough that I stopped counting. She told him how she'd finally run, packed a bag while he was at work, and disappeared into the city. How Devin had found her anyway, showing up outside her apartment. How he'd once waited in the stairwell of her building just to prove he could. How did you survive? Dominic asked. I stayed invisible, she said. Worked places where no one cared enough to ask questions. Moved every few months. Learned how to disappear in a crowded room. And tonight, he asked. She met his eyes. Tonight, I couldn't disappear anymore. Dominic exhaled slowly, something dark moving behind his expression. That man will not touch you again, he said with quiet finality. She wanted desperately to believe him. What about your fiancé? She asked. Isabella's not the kind of woman who lets things go. No, he agreed. She's the kind who believes she's smarter than everyone else. Naya hesitated. And is she? He looked at her then, really looked, with an intensity that made her breath catch. She was, he said, until tonight. Her heart skipped. You're not angry at me, she said quietly. Not a question. I should be, he replied honestly. You caused chaos, humiliated me publicly, forced my hand in front of people who'll use it as weakness. She nodded. I know. But, he continued, voice dropping, you also saved my life, which changes everything. Something unspoken passed between them then. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Understanding. Two people who'd both learned to survive in worlds that wanted to break them. You could have walked away, he said. Most people would have. But then I'd be just like her, Naya said, smiling while someone else dies. Dominic straightened, and that answer seemed to settle something inside him, some internal calculation clicking into place. I'll have clothes brought for you, he said, standing. You'll stay here tonight. And after that? She asked. He paused at the doorway, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the hallway light. After that, he said, we decide what you become. The door closed softly behind him. Naya leaned back against the expensive couch, heart still racing. She'd walked into that engagement party as a nobody, invisible, forgotten, barely surviving. She'd walked out under the protection of Chicago's most dangerous man. And she had absolutely no idea what that would cost her. Naya didn't sleep. She lay on the edge of the bed in the guest room, fully dressed in borrowed clothes that smelled faintly of expensive detergent and something masculine. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, thread count probably in the thousands. Untouched. She couldn't bring herself to relax into them. Safety felt unfamiliar, suspicious. Every sound made her body tense. The whisper of the climate control system, distant footsteps somewhere in the house, a door closing on another floor. Her nervous system was still stuck in survival mode, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Somewhere near dawn, there was a quiet knock. She sat up instantly, pulse spiking. Yes. The door opened slowly. Dominic stepped in, no suit jacket this time, just a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. The tattoos she'd noticed earlier were visible now, intricate designs that disappeared beneath the fabric, telling stories he probably never shared. He looked human, tired, You're awake, he said. I don't really sleep when things change this fast, she replied. He nodded like that made perfect sense to him. I had my people look into Devon. Her stomach dropped. You found him? Yes. Is he? She stopped herself, the question catching in her throat.
No.
Don't tell me. He studied her carefully, those dark eyes missing nothing. Why not? Because if I know you hurt him for me, she said quietly, I won't know how to feel about it. Something in his expression shifted, softened slightly at the edges. I haven't touched him, he said.
Yet.
She exhaled slowly, relief and dread tangling together into something she couldn't name. Then why are you here? She asked. Because Isabella is no longer my fiancée, he said flatly. And because my enemies will test me now. They'll look for weakness. Her chest tightened. Because of me. Because of betrayal, he corrected firmly. You only exposed it. Don't carry weight that isn't yours. He leaned against the doorframe, and for a moment he just looked at her. This man who commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. You should leave the city, he said finally.
Tonight.
I'll arrange everything. New documents. New identity. Somewhere far from Chicago where Devon will never find you. She blinked. What? You did what you came to do, he continued, his tone practical. You warned me. Saved me. Now you get to disappear safely. That's the deal. The offer was everything she'd prayed for once. Complete reinvention. A clean slate. Freedom. And yet, no, she said. He frowned slightly. Explain. If I run now, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady, Devon wins. He'll know I was scared enough to vanish. And Isabella, she'll still be out there. Still dangerous. You think staying here is safer? Dominic asked, something almost like concern flickering across his face. I think hiding hasn't worked for me so far, Naya replied. And I think the only reason I'm still alive right now is because I stopped hiding and acted. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Finally, he said, You don't understand what staying near me means. I understand enough, she said. It means danger. But at least it's honest danger. At least I can see it coming. He let out a short breath, not quite a laugh, but close. You're not like most people. No, she agreed. I'm tired of being afraid. He straightened from the doorframe. Then listen carefully.
She did.
My world doesn't forgive weakness, he said, his voice low and serious. If you stay, people will assume you matter to me. They'll use that. Her heart skipped.
Doi.
Matter to you. His gaze held hers, and for a moment she saw past the carefully constructed walls. That, he said quietly, is what we're deciding. Later that day, Dominic summoned his inner circle. Naya wasn't invited. That alone told her how serious the situation was. She paced the living room, fingers worrying at the hem of her borrowed sweater, feeling exposed without her phone. It had been confiscated for security. She felt naked without it, stripped of her last illusion of control. Hours crawled past. When Dominic finally returned, his jaw was tight, movements precise in that way that meant he was barely containing something volatile. It's worse than I thought, he said without preamble. She looked up from the couch. Isabella? She wasn't working alone, he replied. She'd already promised pieces of my territory to people who wanted me gone, made deals behind my back for months. Nia's blood ran cold. And now they know that I know, he said, which means they'll move faster. Look for leverage. Her throat tightened. Me. Yes. The word hit like a physical blow. Dominic stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. Which is why we need to change how the world sees you. She searched his face.
How?
He hesitated, and that hesitation frightened her more than any threat. There's one option, he said slowly. It will protect you completely. What's the cost? It binds you to me. Understanding dawned slowly, then all at once. Marriage, she whispered. Yes. She laughed once, breathless, disbelieving. You're joking. I don't joke about survival, he said. She shook her head, panic rising. I can't marry you. I barely know you. I'm not asking for love, he said calmly, voice steady. I'm offering safety. That's worse, she said, her voice cracking. You don't marry someone just for safety. In my world, he said, you do. She paced away from him, heart hammering. This morning you were offering me a way out. Now you want me bound to you for life. Not life, he corrected. Contractually. Time limited. She turned sharply. And after? After, he said, you walk away. Untouched. Protected. Free. She stared at him, searching for the trap. And you? I get someone I trust beside me when I need it most. That's it. That's it. Something about that answer hurt more than it should have. Why me? She asked softly. Dominic didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. Because you were brave enough to tell the truth when it could have killed you, he said. Because you didn't ask for money or power. You asked for nothing. He paused. And because if I put someone beside me now, it has to be someone I know won't sell me out. Her chest tightened painfully. You don't know me. I know enough, he said. You didn't run when you could have. You didn't beg. You faced the danger head on. She swallowed hard. And if I say no? He didn't threaten. He simply said, then I'll still protect you.
Just not like this.
And not as effectively. The honesty in that was terrifying. She sank onto the couch, head in her hands. Marriage. To a man who could end lives with a phone call. To a man whose enemies would gladly kill her just to watch him bleed. And yet, she looked up at him. If I do this, she said carefully, you don't touch me unless I say so. His answer was immediate. Agreed. No ownership, she added. No control. Agreed. And when it ends, she said, her voice shaking, you let me go. Completely. He nodded once, and she saw something like respect in his eyes. On my word. She studied his face, searching for deception, for the catch she knew had to be hiding somewhere. She found none. Why do I feel like this will change everything? She whispered. Because it will, Dominic said quietly. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. Nia took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff she couldn't see the bottom of. Then we do it, she said finally. Something dark and protective flashed through his eyes, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Then you're mine to protect, he replied. And for the first time since the engagement party, Naya wasn't sure whether she should feel safe or terrified. Or both. The news spread faster than Naya expected. By the next morning, whispers were already crawling through Dominic's world like smoke under a door. Not announced. Not shouted. Just carefully placed words in the right ears. She's staying. She matters. He chose her. Naya felt it in the way the guards looked at her now, not curious or dismissive anymore, but alert. Respectful. Like she'd crossed an invisible line overnight and become someone they had to account for. She hated how quickly her life had shifted. She hated how part of her didn't hate it at all. Dominic insisted she move into the master suite. Not to share it, he'd take the guest room down the hall, but because it was the most secure part of the house. Reinforced walls.
Panic button.
Direct line to security. She argued. She lost. This isn't about comfort, he told her firmly. It's about keeping you alive. So she accepted it, sleeping in sheets that probably cost more than her first car, surrounded by minimalist furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. They began preparing the contract quietly. No big law firm, no lengthy negotiations. Just terms laid out clearly on paper. Protection for the duration of the agreement. Public acknowledgement as his wife. No intimacy without explicit consent. Complete freedom when it ended. It felt surreal, signing her name beside his on documents that would legally bind them. You don't have to do this, he said one last time before the documents were finalized, his pen hovering over the signature line. She met his eyes. Neither do you. A muscle in his jaw flexed. I choose to. That word, choose followed her long after he left the room. The engagement ring Isabella had worn was gone, of course. Dominic replaced it with something simpler, a platinum band with a single princess-cut diamond, deliberately understated. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing that screamed ownership. When he placed it in Nia's palm, his fingers brushed hers briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her that had nothing to do with fear. This isn't a promise, he said quietly. What is it then? A shield. She closed her fingers around the cool metal. I've never had one of those. You do now. The first public appearance came sooner than she expected. A private dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse in the Gold Coast. Limited guests, carefully vetted. High-ranking allies who needed reassurance that Dominic Castellano hadn't lost control of his empire after the engagement party disaster. Nia stood beside him in a simple black dress he'd had delivered that morning, heart pounding as eyes assessed her from every angle. She felt exposed, evaluated, found wanting by people who'd killed for less than a perceived slight. Dominic leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear.
Breathe.
They're watching me, not you. That's not true, she murmured. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, not possessive, but anchoring. It is now, he said. The effect was immediate and undeniable. The room shifted. People smiled at her cautiously, spoke carefully, chose their words like they were navigating a minefield. She realized then what being his wife, even in name only, actually meant. Power by proximity. Later that night, when they returned to the Lincoln Park house, the tension finally broke. Nia kicked off the uncomfortable heels and collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion washing over her in waves. I don't know how you do that every day, she said. Dominic loosened his tie, his movements precise even when tired. You learn not to feel it. She looked at him, really looked. That sounds lonely. Something flickered across his face. It is. The admission surprised them both. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just heavy with things neither of them knew how to say yet. I didn't expect you to look at me the way you did tonight, she said carefully. How did I look at you? Like you were proud. His gaze held hers. I was.
Her heart stuttered in her chest.
They stood there, something fragile and electric hovering in the space between them, when his phone buzzed violently on the granite counter. The moment shattered. His expression hardened immediately as he checked the screen. Where? He listened for a moment, then ended the call with a sharp tap. Devon made contact, he said flatly. Her blood turned to ice. With you?
No.
With someone who knows you. His eyes darkened. Someone from your old life. Her hands clenched into fists. What does he want? Leverage, Dominic said. And attention. He's trying to remind you he still exists. Nia's chest tightened painfully. I can handle him. Dominic stepped closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming.
No.
You don't handle him.
I do.
The firmness in his voice left absolutely no room for argument. She nodded slowly, throat tight. What happens now? Now, he said, eyes darkening further. We end the illusion that anyone can touch you. Fear flickered through her. And after? After, he said quietly, we make it real. She swallowed hard. You're talking about this marriage like it's a weapon. In my world, he replied, it is. That night, Nia couldn't sleep again. She lay awake in the too comfortable bed, listening to the quiet house, acutely aware of Dominic's presence down the hall. The knowledge that he was nearby unsettled her in ways she wasn't ready to examine. She thought of Devon, of Isabella's cruel laugh, of the ring on her finger that felt heavier than it should. She also thought of Dominic's hand at her back, the way his voice softened only when he spoke to her, the way he'd said I was proud. Sometime past midnight, there was a soft knock. She sat up. Yes. Dominic stood in the doorway, still dressed in his shirt and slacks from earlier. I won't stay long. I just wanted you to hear this from me. She nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. You're safe tonight, he said. And tomorrow. And every day after, as long as you're with me. Her chest tightened. And if I decide to leave, his gaze softened just a fraction. Then I'll make sure you leave alive and protected. That's a promise. She studied him in the dim light. You don't sound afraid of losing me. I am, he said quietly. I just don't let fear make decisions for me. Something in her shifted then, some internal wall beginning to crack.
Dominic, she said.
He paused, waiting.
Thank you, she said.
For choosing me. His eyes held hers for a long moment, and she saw something vulnerable flash across his face before the mask came back. You chose first, he said. I'm just honoring it. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Nia lay back against the pillows, heart racing, realizing something she hadn't expected. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to care, and that scared her more than any threat ever had. The first crack in their carefully constructed contract appeared quietly 3 days later. It wasn't a touch. It wasn't a kiss. It was a look. Nia noticed it during another meeting she hadn't been meant to attend. Dominic's advisors filled the private room at the back of a restaurant in River North, voices low and tense, layered with power plays and barely veiled threats. She sat beside him, hands folded neatly in her lap, playing the role she'd been assigned: invisible, decorative, safe. Until one of the men, Vincent something, she'd forgotten his last name, laughed. "Your new wife," he said casually, eyes sliding over Nia like she was an object to be appraised. "She's unexpected." The word carried weight. Judgment. She felt Dominic's body shift beside her, tension radiating off him like heat. "Careful," Dominic said softly. The room went still. "I didn't mean offense," Vincent added quickly, reading the danger too late. Dominic's hand moved then, not to threaten, not to display dominance, but to rest lightly over Nia's folded fingers on the table. The gesture was small, intimate, possessive. Nia's breath caught. "She's not unexpected," Dominic continued, his voice dropping lower. "She's chosen. Remember that." The message was unmistakable. The meeting ended shortly after. Back in the car, Nia finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he said. "I did." "You touched me," she said, not accusing, just stating fact. He glanced at her, something unreadable in his dark eyes. "Did you want me to stop?" Her heart pounded.
No.
The word hung between them, heavier than any contract clause they'd signed. That night, the house felt different.
Charged.
They passed each other in hallways more often, spoke longer over meals. Conversations drifted from polite to personal without either of them acknowledging the shift. Dominic learned she drank her coffee black, hated silence when it felt forced, and slept with the lights on when memories pressed too hard. Nia learned he counted steps when anxious, removed his watch before difficult conversations, and never spoke about his childhood unless asked directly. One evening, after a particularly tense call with his people, he sat beside her on the couch instead of across the room. She stiffened instinctively. He noticed, pulled back slightly. "I won't cross lines." "I know," she replied. "I just need a moment." He nodded, waited patiently. After a few seconds, she leaned back into the cushions, releasing the breath she'd been holding. "You can stay," she said quietly.
He did.
Their shoulders brushed. Nothing more. It was somehow more intimate than a kiss. Then Devon broke the silence. Not directly. That wasn't his style.
He was too smart for that.
Too careful. Nia found the message waiting on the burner phone Dominic had given her for emergencies. "You think hiding behind him makes you untouchable?" Her hands started shaking as she read the next line. "Asterisk, you still belong to me. I'll prove it. Asterisk." Dominic saw the change in her face instantly. "What did he say?" She handed him the phone without a word, unable to speak around the fear suddenly choking her. Dominic's expression darkened, not with rage, but with something colder, more dangerous. "He's testing boundaries," he said, voice flat. "Seeing how far he can push before I respond." "And if he doesn't stop?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper.
He will.
That night, Dominic didn't sleep. Nia knew because she didn't either. At some point near dawn, she left her room and found him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights reflecting off the glass, tattoos visible beneath his rolled sleeves. You should rest, she said quietly. He didn't turn. I will. Later. You're planning something. Yes. She hesitated, then stepped closer until she was standing beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. Is it always like this? She asked, waiting for the next move. For people like me, he said, yes. For people like me, she said, this is new. He turned then, looking at her carefully in the dim light. You can still walk away. The offer stands. She shook her head. I don't want to. The honesty surprised them both. Silence settled between them, thick and fragile. You know, she said softly, you never asked what I want after all this ends. He frowned slightly. What do you want? She looked up at him, her heart in her throat. Peace. His expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. So do I. The next morning, everything escalated. One of Dominic's men, a lieutenant named Marco who'd been with him for years, was attacked outside his home in Bridgeport. Not killed. Warned. A message carved into his car door where only insiders would see it.
Devant signature.
He's getting closer, Nia whispered when Dominic told her, fear flooding her veins like ice water. Yes, Dominic agreed. Which means this ends soon.
How?
He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst ways. By removing the illusion that you're only protected by a contract, he said, his voice low. Her heart raced. What does that mean? It means, he said, eyes locking onto hers, we stop pretending. She swallowed hard. Pretending what? That this marriage is just strategy. The air between them shifted, became electric. Dominic, she began, but he raised a hand, not to stop her, but to steady himself. I won't touch you, he said. Not until you tell me to. That hasn't changed. Her voice was barely audible. And if I never do? Then I'll still protect you, he said. But I won't lie about what I feel anymore. Her breath caught. What do you feel? He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. Before either of them could say more, his phone rang again. Another interruption. Another reminder of the world they lived in. Dominic checked the screen, jaw tightening. Stay close to me, he said. From now on, you don't leave my sight. I already don't, she replied. And this time, neither of them pretended the words meant nothing. They stopped pretending the next day. Not with words. With instinct. Dominic didn't let Nia out of his sight. Meetings, drives, meals, she was always within reach. Not hidden behind him like some fragile thing to be protected, but beside him, equal, visible, and everyone noticed. The shift unsettled his people more than any show of force ever had. She's not just a shield anymore, one of his men muttered after a meeting at a warehouse in Pilsen. She's becoming a liability, another whispered. A weakness. Dominic heard them all. He didn't care. What he cared about was the way Nia flinched when footsteps echoed too loudly behind her. The way her smile faded whenever a phone buzzed unexpectedly. The way she tried so hard to be brave when fear still lived under her skin like an old wound. That night, the house was too quiet. Nia stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing, when Dominic entered. He paused when he saw her hands trembling. Did he contact you again? He asked. She nodded, unable to speak. Not directly, she finally managed. He sent flowers. To a cafe I worked at months ago. With my name on the card. Rage flickered across Dominic's face, raw and dangerous. He's reminding you he can reach anywhere, he said quietly. Yes. He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, stopping just short of touching her. You're not alone anymore, he said. She swallowed hard. Say it. What? Say it, she repeated, voice cracking. Out loud. You're not alone anymore, he said firmly. I've got you. Say it again. You're not alone anymore, Nia. I promise. That was the moment something inside him snapped. Dominic reached out and pulled her into his chest, not roughly, not urgently, but protectively, like she was something precious that needed shielding from the world. Nia froze for half a second, then melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, her face pressed against his chest as her breath shuddered. He wrapped one arm around her back, the other resting lightly against her hair, careful not to cage her. He didn't kiss her. He just held her. I won't let him take anything else from you, he murmured against her hair. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. I don't know how to stop being scared. You don't have to, he said. I'll be scared for you. She laughed weakly through tears. That doesn't sound reassuring. It should, he said. I'm very dangerous when I'm scared. That earned a real laugh, wet and broken but real. When she pulled back, their faces were inches apart. Too close. Her eyes flicked to his lips, then back up. Dominic noticed. His breath slowed. If I kiss you, he said carefully, there's no pretending after that. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Then don't pretend. He hesitated, that restraint, that control, and it shattered something inside her. Nia reached up and kissed him first.
Soft. Tentative.
Nothing like the kiss that had started everything at the engagement party. This one was slow, careful, real. Dominic's hands tightened at her waist, not claiming, but grounding her. He deepened the kiss only when she leaned in, only when she sighed against him, like she'd been waiting for this. When they pulled apart, both of them were breathing harder. That, she whispered, wasn't strategy. No, he agreed. That was reckless. She smiled despite everything. Seems on brand for us. His forehead rested against hers. This makes you more of a target. I already was, she said. At least now I know why. He exhaled slowly. You should hate me for this. She shook her head. I don't. That was when the call came. Dominic's phone buzzed violently on the counter. He checked it once and went completely still. What? Nia asked, fear spiking through her.
Devin, he said.
He made a move. Her stomach dropped. Where? Not here, Dominic replied, his voice deadly calm. Worse. He turned the phone so she could see the photo. Her breath left her lungs in a rush. It was her younger sister, Maya, who was supposed to be safe in Milwaukee, tied to a chair, bruised, alive but terrified. A message beneath it, come alone or she dies. Nia swayed. Dominic caught her instantly. No, she whispered.
No, no, no.
He wants me emotional, Dominic said, his voice turning cold and analytical.
Sloppy.
He won't get it. I'll go, Nia said desperately, grabbing his arm. I'll talk to him. You won't, She's my sister. And you're my responsibility, he snapped, then immediately softened. I won't lose you. Or her. You can't control this, Naya cried. I can, he said. And I will. He turned sharply, barking orders into his phone. The house erupted into controlled chaos. Men moving, weapons being checked, vehicles starting. Naya grabbed his arm again. Promise me you won't kill him just because you're angry. He looked at her, really looked. I promise, he said quietly. I'll kill him because he deserves it. Fear and trust collided inside her. You're going to war, she whispered. Yes, he said. And this time it ends. For good. He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't know were falling. Stay here. Locked down. Guarded. She nodded shakily. As he turned to leave, she grabbed his hand.
Dominic. He stopped.
Come back, she said. Please. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle, lingering. I always do, he said. But for the first time since she'd met him, Naya wasn't sure if that was a promise or a hope. Dominic didn't go alone. He let Devin believe he would. That was the difference between rage and control. The location Devin had sent was an abandoned meatpacking plant near the stockyards. Rusted steel, broken windows, the kind of place bodies were found weeks later. Or never. Dominic arrived first, stepping out of the black Mercedes with nothing but his phone and the calm that came before violence. Devin emerged from the shadows, smiling that same smile Naya probably once found charming. You came, Devin said, looking around. Alone. Guess you really do care about her. Dominic's eyes were empty of everything except cold calculation. Where's the girl? Devin chuckled. Straight to business.
No srets, no begine.
You misunderstand, Dominic replied. This is the last conversation you'll ever have. That was the signal. The lights snapped on. Industrial floods that turned night into day. Men poured out of the shadows like water through a broken dam.
Armed. Silent.
Efficient. Devin spun, panic flashing across his face. You lied. I adapted, Dominic said calmly. There's a difference. Devin reached for his weapon. Gunfire erupted, controlled, precise, over before Devin understood he'd already lost. Devin fell to his knees, bleeding, breath ragged, eyes wild with disbelief and pain. You don't get to hurt her anymore, Dominic said calmly, stepping closer. You don't even get to say her name. Devin laughed weakly, blood on his teeth. She chose you? You think she'll survive your world? Dominic crouched down, meeting Devin's eyes one last time. She already has, he said. The final shot was quiet. When Dominic returned to the Lincoln Park house hours later, dawn was breaking over Lake Michigan. The house was silent. Naya was waiting in the living room, knees drawn to her chest, eyes red but alert. She stood the moment she saw him. Maya, she asked, voice breaking. She's safe, he said immediately. Already on a plane to Portland. New identity. Protected. She'll never have to look over her shoulder again. Naya's knees gave out. Dominic caught her before she hit the floor, pulling her against him as sobs racked her body, grief and relief colliding violently. He held her without words, absorbing everything she couldn't carry alone. After a long time, She pulled back enough to look at him. "You killed him," she said. Not a question. "Yes," he answered honestly. She studied his face, searching for something. "Do you regret it?"
"No," he said.
"But I regret that you needed me to." Tears slid down her cheeks again. "I didn't want this blood on you. It was already there," he said gently, tucking hair behind her ear. "You didn't put it there, Nia." She nodded slowly, processing. "Then this ends now," she said. Dominic stiffened. "What ends?" "This life," she said. "For me. For us. I won't be the reason you keep killing." He looked at her for a long moment, and then he surprised her. "I was already planning to leave it," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "You were? You think I'm lying?" "I think you were protecting me," she corrected. "There are things you don't dismantle overnight." She searched his eyes, looking for the truth. "And the contract?" she asked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out folded papers, their marriage agreement.
He tore them in half. Once. Twice.
3 times. "I don't need a contract anymore," he said quietly. "I need a choice." Her heart pounded. "Whose choice?" "Yours." Silence wrapped around them like a blanket. "I love you," Nia said suddenly, the words surprising even her. Dominic closed his eyes briefly, like the confession hit somewhere deep and vulnerable he'd been protecting. "I've loved you since the moment you chose my life over your safety," he admitted, his voice rough. "I just didn't think I deserved to say it." She stepped closer. "Do you still think that?" "No," he said, opening his eyes. "Because you're still here." They kissed then, not desperate, not careful, but certain. Like they'd both finally stopped fighting against something inevitable. The world outside could burn for all they cared. They'd already survived worse. 6 months later. The city didn't stop just because their war ended. Cars still hummed along Lakeshore Drive. Lights still glowed in skyscrapers. People still chased ordinary lives that felt impossibly distant from what Nia and Dominic had survived together. For the first time since the engagement party, there were no alarms.
No whispered threats.
No phones vibrating with bad news. Just quiet. Nia stood on the balcony of their new apartment in the South Loop, smaller than the Lincoln Park house, deliberately anonymous, watching the city she'd almost disappeared in. When Dominic joined her, he didn't speak right away. He simply stood beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. "I used to think silence meant danger," she said softly. "What do you think now?" "That it sounds like permission to breathe." He nodded, understanding completely. "I used to think peace was weakness." She looked at him. "And now?" "Now I think I was wrong about a lot of things." She smiled faintly. "Me too." They didn't rush anything after that. No grand announcements. No forced celebrations. Dominic quietly dismantled the last of the alliances that kept him tied to bloodshed. Assets were liquidated. Power was redistributed. Names were erased from organizational charts. People noticed. Some didn't approve. But no one challenged him. Nia watched the transformation with careful eyes, afraid to hope too much, afraid that one wrong move would drag them back into darkness. One evening, weeks later, Dominic came home earlier than usual. He found her in the kitchen, barefoot, humming softly as she cooked something that smelled like garlic and hope. The sight stopped him in the doorway. He realized then that this simple, ordinary moment, was the life he'd been fighting for without knowing it. "I'm done," he said. She turned, wooden spoon in hand. "With dinner?" He smiled slightly. "With the Empire." Her breath caught. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. "I want a future that doesn't require you to look over your shoulder." She walked to him slowly, setting the spoon aside. "And what if I still do sometimes?" she asked. "Then I'll still be there," he replied. "Just not with a gun." She laughed quietly, pressing her forehead to his chest. "I didn't plan to fall in love with you." "Neither did I," he said, wrapping his arms around her. "You ruined everything." "And you're not mad?" "No," he said.
"I'm grateful."
3 months after that, there was a wedding. Not extravagant, not secretive, just honest. A small ceremony in Lincoln Park itself, surrounded by trees and lake breeze and the handful of people who mattered. Maya came, healthy, smiling, starting over in Portland with a graphic design degree and hope in her eyes. Marcus, the bartender who'd vouched for Nia at the Grand Marquis, showed up with his wife. Even a few of Dominic's men came, the ones who'd chosen to walk away with him when he dismantled his empire. No contracts this time. No deals. Only choice. When Nia walked toward him in a simple white dress that cost less than her borrowed clothes from that first night, Dominic didn't see the woman who'd once trembled in fear. He didn't see the waitress everyone had overlooked. He saw the woman who'd saved his life when it would have been easier to walk away. The woman who'd chosen courage over silence. The woman he chose every single day. Later that night, as they stood alone on another balcony beneath soft lights and Chicago stars, Nia rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The kiss?" "All the time," he admitted. "Any regrets?" "It cost me everything," he said. She smiled. "And gave you something better." He kissed her hair. "It gave me you." And for the first time in his life, that was enough. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fight or run. Sometimes it's speaking up when silence would be safer. Sometimes it's choosing love when fear tells you not to. Because the right choice doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives with shaking hands, a reckless kiss, and the courage to change everything. So let me ask you, if you were Nia, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have risked everything to save him? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because more powerful stories like this are coming your way. Thank you for watching, and welcome to a new year of unforgettable stories.